I'm here with Dan Evans, the town moderator. Dan, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome. Happy to do it.
So town meeting, annual town meeting on June 16th was a pretty unusual one, and you've been through a lot.
It was, and required hugely more preparation, as you and others closely involved know, and went off amazingly smoothly, given what we were trying to do. As some people heard me joke beforehand that I was pretty sure that if we did that 3 times, we'd really have it down. And the challenge was to try to figure out for time number 1 what was potentially going to go wrong and try to avert it. And a lot of people put a lot of work in to thinking through the things that could go wrong and planning for it. And it went off just amazingly well.
So what was it like being up there? I mean, looking at people in cars and holding out the ballots.
A little disconcerting. It's hard, but when you can't see people, I realized after some amount of the meeting that I was talking louder into the microphone than I usually do. One, because I could see that I was speaking to a parking lot full of cars. But you can't see from any expressions any reaction to what I or anybody else is saying. So, you could be speaking into a vacuum and you don't really know. So it's a little hard. It makes it feel a little less personal. I did have to keep reminding myself that I should say, all in favor, please hold up your yellow card, as opposed to all in favor, please say aye. I don't think I slipped up on that. So it is definitely harder. I would not suggest by any stretch that we start moving to that form of meeting all the time.
So it was when we first talked about this, obviously the concerns were that we really needed to do a town meeting, right? Town meeting is the fundamental unit of government here, right? It approves the budget, it approves laws, it makes the town go every year. And at the same time, we had a public health crisis where putting people in the gym just didn't seem like a very good idea. And then we talked about ideas, and this seemed to be something that might work. And over a period of, I guess, 3-4 weeks, it kind of came together.
It did. I mean, obviously you and Glenn and a whole lot of other people, the police chief, the fire chief, tons of others, came together to do that. It clearly, when you and I first talked about it, and others, and I think it had the same reaction, it was the one possibility that we were pretty sure we could safely do. And the other possibilities either, had logistical issues like weather, or we weren't sure that they actually would be safe from a public health perspective. And this was one that had some shortcomings in terms of the ease of discussion, but it under the circumstances, it was one that was we were quite confident could be safe, and pretty confident that technologically we could pull off, or more accurately, you and others could pull off.
And again, that was one of the most, I mean, it was unusual for me too. I don't usually speak on every article. Role for a few other people. But we did have a couple of videos, and again, that actually worked out pretty well, I thought.
I like the videos, yes. We can maybe make sure that some of them could be a little bit shorter, but yes, I think the videos is a nice, for an appropriate article, a video can be a very helpful way to explain something.
So even out of obviously unusual circumstances, sometimes good ideas come out. And it was really, I was heartened at the sheer number of people who came out. Carol's count was 213 voters taking part.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it had gotten that high. I was surprised that we hit the quorum at 6 o'clock, actually a minute or two before. And then quite soon after that, the line of cars tapered off. So we had sort of a Goldilocks turnout of just enough, or comfortable enough, but not neither having to stress too much about a quorum, nor having a logjam, which would have been equally frustrating for some. So that worked out. And so I'm pleased. I had not heard the final count. That's higher than I might have guessed, given how the line of cars tapered off so quickly after we got the quorum.
I think we had done a fair amount of effort in advance to let people know what was going to happen. We had the video, which again, I want to thank Don Royan and his team for pulling together. And we kind of pushed that out a lot of places. And we opened the gates at 5. And people came. And they came early and they settled in. I don't know if they had popcorn with them, but they most certainly
Yeah, no, I'm sure some people realized they could bring refreshments more easily than they can at the high school.
What would you say your biggest takeaways of the evening?
I don't know if it's takeaway, but just it was very smooth. I mean, I think there clearly was less discussion than when we're live. In terms of the number of people that commented on articles was very low. That we've been trending that way anyway, which I think is great. I think it as a general matter speaks to the preparation and the discussion that's gone on in advance, because in most cases, coming up with new ideas on the floor of town meeting is not the way to be doing things. So it's, I think it's generally appropriate that the issues be crystallized in advance, and then at town meeting we can have a yay or nay vote, because by then the various other alternatives for improving it ought to have been figured out. So I think it's a continuation, but I also think that there was had to have been some dampening of enthusiasm for speaking when you have to go to the trouble of getting out of a car and going over to a microphone. So that was one takeaway.
So overall, what were your, obviously it was a successful night, went through 27 articles, some being indefinitely postponed because there was nothing to them to do that night. That said, there were a lot of meaty articles that were taken up. There was some discussion, and I think the town meeting actually accomplished quite a lot in about 90 minutes.
Oh yeah, no, agreed. I mean, there was a lot done, no question about it. And again, I think separate and apart from the format of the meeting, again, we've been trending through a lot of good work by you and others. We've been trending towards much of the controversy being dealt with prior to the meeting, so that the meeting, while it's weighty, the discussions have been had, the compromises have been worked out, and for the large part, people are happy. And I think that's what, maybe that makes for slightly boring town meetings, but that really is mostly what they should be. There's every once in a while you're going to have a crystallized issue where there's a legitimate divergence of opinion, and it needs to be talked out and voted on, and the votes can be close. But most of the time, I mean, in past years, and it's been now some time, but in past years, we often have long debates as people are trying to tweak things. And I find that very frustrating, because the tweaking should be done in advance. The floor of town meeting is not a great place for tweaking. There's too many people there. The ideas are hard to explain and for people to get good views on. So I think in that progress has been great, and I think we just saw it continuing at the meeting.
Well, thank you, Dan. So we did leave a few articles off collectively going in. And then those some zoning and a potential water rate increase, and they're going to be heading potentially for special town meeting. So there'll be plenty of debate, I think, at the meeting ahead.
Yes, well, we haven't talked about, but we can place bets on whether we think we're going to be using the parking lot of the Music Circus and FM radio again for the special, because I think there's a decent chance we might be.
Well, we'll definitely have some ideas as we go forward. So as of today, I'm very grateful that we were able to make it happen, and thank you very much.
Thank you. No, thank you. I appreciate you. I hope everyone's recognizing all the hard work that you and a whole lot of people put in to make that happen. So thank you.
Well, as most things in town government, as I said from when I got hired, local town government, particularly in a town like Cohasset, is a team sport. So, and thank you, Dan, for serving as moderator and for all the work going into and managing annual town meeting 2016. I'm sorry.
2020.
2020,
yes.
16th. I'm not even getting the date right. The 250th anniversary town meeting was most certainly one for the books.
It was one for the books.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate your time today.
All right. Have a good evening.
I'm here today to talk about Town Meeting 2020 with three of the key figures who helped pull the meeting together. We have Don Royne, the executive producer at 143 TV, Ron Menard, our Town of Cohasset CIO, and Glenn Pratt, Cohasset's Director of Emergency Management. Welcome, everybody.
Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
So I'll start off with Ron, because he's the one I had the first conversations about this with, other than Dan Evans and Carol St. Pierre. So when we first started to talk about town meeting and doing a drive-up movie theater kind of concept, what thoughts went through your mind?
Sheer fear. We had vetted multiple venues and to ensure that we were in line with, the state's guidelines with regards to meeting during a COVID-19 pandemic. This one was the only venue that really met the needs and solidified those goals. So there immediately was a number of different logistical items that we needed to review, and the pages were many for this particular venue. But when we took some time and we actually went through everything, we felt pretty strongly that this was the venue to endorse, and this was the solution to go forward with. So it was a little bit of a daunting task to identify everything from mosquito spraying to where the sunset was going to set that day, and how that might impact video. But it all came together really well, and I know my team and everyone I've spoken with is really proud of that accomplishment.
So after we started the conversation, Ron, I know we all gathered, and this was several weeks before town meeting, and we had a large group in the parking lot. I remember, Glenn, you were everywhere. You were looking and talking with everybody and assessing the site. That was the first big group meeting we had right on site at the Music Circus.
Right. We, first of all, we were very lucky to have the Music Circus be the hosts. They were invaluable because they're in the production business. So a lot of things they gave us good guidance on. But from the first day, emergency manager's role in part is to coordinate different departments and agencies. And this was quite a coordinating effort. Eight town departments and multiple vendors, but we did it.
It was, if I recall, as we got together that day, we probably had 15, 18 people on site, right? There was emergency management folks, there was IT folks, Don and some of his team. We had police, we had fire, and we had a bunch of Music Circus folks. And it was like, well, we have this great, as you said, Glenn, a great facility that's they do events, right? How do we pull it off in the parking lot? And I guess, Don, one of the big questions was, how do you broadcast it?
That was, as Ron said, a little bit frightening and daunting. We'd never done this kind of transmission before. And I know there were so many moving parts, and we had a lot of points of failure, potential failure. So theoretically, between Ron and Thistle and Jay and Thistle, we kind of figured how it might work and what components might be needed. But everything kind of fell into place. We kind of learned on the fly. So I think it was a great opportunity for us. We could do these kind of things in the future. We know interdepartmentally, we could do almost anything. How everybody dovetailed together was just amazing. We borrowed from each other, thoughts from each other. We practiced how this would operate. We showed the community how it would work. And I think a lot of this helped how it actually worked on that night.
So, Glenn, what was the biggest thing when you saw the site? What was the biggest concern, the challenge you thought you faced?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Glenn. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So the thing that was appeared to be the biggest challenge was how are we going to get these few hundred motor vehicles into a confined space where the town clerk could check everyone in, give them the literature they needed for the meeting, and then move them into a location where they could actually see what was going on. So that was the first thing that entered my mind. And certainly the town clerk was pretty nervous about how we were going to do that. But after a few tries and lots of head scratching, we got it.
And I know, Ron, the connectivity was probably the biggest thing too, right? Not just, clearly for 143 TV, but also for folks who, might want to, log in onto their cell phones or their smartphones and making sure the site was secure. Yeah,
that site, and as well as a number of other parking lots that we considered initially, we looked at bandwidth, and some of that bandwidth was related to cell coverage and how strong those signals were in the parking lots. Traditionally, that parking lot is down in a hole with regards to cell carrier coverage. So we were only getting 1 or 2 bars, and that really changed the way that we approached the town meeting. And what started to be something where we were looking to blanket the parking lot with Wi-Fi so that we could make this work was ratcheted back so that we really kind of streamlined exactly what we needed for technology, bandwidth, and those types of things to make that successful. And as it turned out, cell coverage was the least of our issues, and we were able to pull it off nicely. I know Chris was playing weatherman 10 days before, projecting what the weather was going to be that day, but he nailed it, I guess. So it all worked out well.
Yeah, we definitely got a nice assist from Mother Nature on this one because, you know, with the forecasts, much less 24 hours sometimes, 2 or 3 weeks ahead. But I don't think we could have asked for a nicer weather night.
That was beautiful.
And the other, you know, one of the other pieces, as we talked about, was, you know, we ended up talking, we ended up moving the meeting. The meeting was scheduled for 7. And normally if you're in the gym, that's fine, right? People are home, they've had their dinner, they can come out at 7. So we decided we moved it out, partly because we want them to have as much sun as possible and keep it in the light. And secondly, because, you know, so many people are home now. Even if they're working, they're home. They could have gotten there at 6. And it seemed to work out okay, moving the time up a little bit.
I can say that I was behind the scenes most of the night doing what we do in IT, but the air of the meeting just seemed to be so much more relaxed than a typical annual town meeting. People came in, they had with smiles on their face. They just truly seemed to enjoy being there. And not that they're not truly enjoying being at the town meeting. I don't think the gym gives us the same ambiance and atmosphere that beautiful day did in the parking lot. So I think it was a huge success from that perspective.
Glenn, you had a crew blanketing that parking lot. I mean, you know, parking and logistics. Tell us a little bit more about that.
We did. So we deployed the emergency management CERT team, the volunteer CERT team. There was 14 CERT members there working in conjunction with the parking lot service people that we had there, and also supporting Carol St. Pierre and her people working in the town clerk tents back and forth with the moderator. We were shuttling people from the senior center parking lot who couldn't park in the lot because they weren't voters, and so we were all over the place. And actually, for emergency management, it was a terrific drill. You know, we're always planning to see how well we do at deploying for certain events. We had a lot of our equipment out there. The municipal radio system was used extensively that night. And we even borrowed golf carts from the Cohasset Country Club because we were short. So it was everything pulled together.
So it was really a town-wide town meeting, it sounds like.
Indeed. And I think a lot of folks, you know, it was kind of like a night out, you know, take your spouse and sit in the car and listen to Dan Evans run a town meeting.
Yeah, and that was one of the things, that was one of the kind of interesting features of this, is that the proceedings were broadcast on an FM radio band as part of this drive-in movie concept. So, I mean, were there any logistics with you, Ron, as part of that?
Not a heck of a lot. I will say I think it's important that we note facilities and DPW even in this. I mean, we had, as you mentioned, multiple departments, and I think some of those might have fallen off the radar with regards to their impact to this meeting. But I know that in some cases, you know, we were in desperate need of a specific technology trailer, which we had, but it had to be retrofitted so that it would integrate with a mast where we could get the cabling up off of the parking lot, so fire apparatus and other types of vehicles could get underneath it. And DPW rose to the occasion and actually fabricated some great solutions for that trailer. You know, and facilities with the generators, the low noise or decibel generators they provided. It really was a huge win, just because of the level of collaboration that took place amongst all these departments.
Yeah, that was clearly one of the things every department's involved in building the budget and preparing articles and all of that. And obviously there's a lot of folks who take part in making town meeting happen, all the boards and committees and all the participation from the fall right through the spring. This was a lot more logistically heavy town meeting. Obviously, there's a lot of work that went on with the Board of Selectmen and the Advisory Committee and Capital Budget and the School Committee, Alternative Energy, I could go on. In this case, though, so many departments, facilities is normally involved anyway, but obviously, as you said, Ron, they were called on to do things like build a mast to move cables that they had never otherwise done, and they did it. Police came down, and they were there to make sure that Sawyer Street, which is a very narrow road, but obviously critical because it's the access point to this, that everything flowed nicely. Good news, of course, is that, you know, the Music Circus has been operating for decades. So the police, as I remember Bill Quigley saying, and he was unable to join us today on this call, He was saying that if there's probably not a location that's better planned out than the Music Circus site. And I think even from an emergency management perspective, right, Glenn? I mean, there's actually been tabletop exercises about that site.
Yeah, this was a step above a tabletop. It was terrific. It really was a good exercise for emergency management. And like Ron says, no matter what we ran into, there was a town department that was ready to scratch their head and figure it out with us, and we got it done. It's going to be one of the things of this emergency, I think, that it's up in the top 10 things that happened, I think, or people remember for sure.
Yeah, I would clearly. And Don, you really drafted a great group. So I know there were cameras all over, and you had your staff manning them, I understand, or staffing them, I should say.
Yeah, not only that, they were all legal voting age. So we wanted to make sure if we had 103 people at the quorum, that 143 TV would have pulled through on that and have the votes come in. But yeah, we were behind the scenes. I was talking to Ron. I spoke with Jay one Sunday afternoon from Thistle, like, what kinds of outputs do you have? How are we going to receive the signal? Who's going to operate the cameras? Which cameras are we going to use? What are their outputs? What are their audio inputs? So we were figuring things out, like, right up to the last minute. I think 3 o'clock on Tuesday, Ron and I did a test, and it was like the first time we knew it would work. And it was the first time in like 3 days I'd finally taken a deep breath and said, oh, this thing's going to work. This is great. And the sound quality was great. The picture was perfect. That was a nice group and a nice, Jack Cunningham was great. While we were working on the end of it, he was taking care of the office and making sure things were edited, and we had the selectmen on. And so it was a really great group effort.
I could say that standing up on the stage, it was most certainly an unusual perspective, because I felt like I was on a TV stage. I think we've all been to public events, right, that have been broadcast, and they're very different. You have cameras and all, and when you attend an NFL game or a Patriots game, for example, you can see the cameras, and it's so much different than you watching it on TV. This is the first time, we always had cameras at town meeting because it's always broadcast, but there were multiple angles, and they kept switching. So who was producing that, Don? Was that you?
No, actually, we talked to his name was Thistle. He was, Ron, you probably know his first name. He was directing. So on Sunday, when I spoke with Jay, we talked about the different camera angles, how they were going to talk to our crew. So then I talked to our crew the next day, and we explained how they were pan, tilt, dolly, truck, all of the terminology that they were going to be using. So when they got behind those cameras, although they were foreign, they'd never used Ikigami cameras, which are $25,000 a piece. They were pretty impressed that our crew just picked it up right away. So we did a lot of pre-talking how to communicate with each other. So it was seamlessly done. I came back to the studio just to make sure everything was broadcast right. I had Ron's text in case we needed to change anything. So between Jack and Ron, if anything had gone wrong, they could communicate, we could get things straightened out. But luckily, nothing happened.
No, Ron, it was an all hands on deck for you too, Ron. I think your whole team was there, right?
Yeah, we had put together a technology trailer. It had switching gear and firewalls. It received obviously the ISP connection with the appropriate amount of bandwidth that we needed to stream that meeting. There were a lot of moving parts. The nice thing is that a lot of that equipment, in fact, all of that equipment, we actually had because it's similar equipment that we use within the schools. There was a re-provisioned firewall that we spun back up and we implemented that. There was a spare switch that we had that we were able to use. So from a cost perspective, we kept it as low as possible. So that worked out really well. And my team had actually, beginning on the Thursday before, had actually gone over to the Council on Aging building and actually had configured all of this gear and used the Comcast connection there to test it all. So there were many hours spent, way before town meeting had begun to start, kicking the tires on this and seeing exactly where the issues might be. So from Wi-Fi to switching to firewalls, it all worked out really well.
So it looks seamless to the voter, right? And the folks who did 213, and by the way, it was a great crowd. 213 registered voters took part in the meeting. What looked seamless, there was a tremendous amount going on behind it. I know someone was literally right behind the stage because I poked my head in before the meeting and saw Ron and his team in one trailer, and I saw Glenn in the parking lot in the golf cart making sure everything was going. And I know you were there, Don. I never saw you because you were back in the back somewhere, I guess. It was really what was as we were all saying before. I think one of the greatest things about this, it was something positive to put our energy into, right? So much of what we've had to do the last 3-4 months has been responsive. This was actually proactive. I mean, it was obviously in response to the health crisis, but it was a proactive, can we pull this off kind of a thing? And I think it was a challenge that got people excited. Right, Glenn? I think that was something I saw.
Yeah, absolutely. It was everybody knew it was a challenge. Everybody was up to the challenge. We did it. It's going to be one of the top events of the crisis. And I think one of the things I hear a lot too is however Don presented the meeting to people on their TV sets at home got great reviews too. It was just much better than however it's presented from the auditorium where we usually have it. So everything about it was great. And, it's behind us now, which is a bit of a relief for a lot of us.
So, I think one of the other aspects of this, and you were pointing this out, Ron, is that the foundational work that's been done over the last several years to build up our staff and physical infrastructure resources really made all the difference, right? I don't think if we had tried to do this 3 or 4 years ago, I don't know that we could have, right, Ron? I'm not sure that, because we've invested so much in our IT infrastructure.
No, I think that the training that we give our personnel and how that training interacts or relates to our technology specifically, was a factor in how easily we pulled this together. And I'm very hesitant to use that word because it was not easy, but it was seamless. And it was because of the staff, the IT staff and the staff across all the departments and their expertise in their line of work and their diligence that really made this successful. I think this meeting has raised the bar with regards to what other town meetings in the future are going to look like and maybe how technologies are leveraged in those as well. So it was good, really good.
Yeah, one of the great things, and I know, Don, you do these all the time, right? Were videos. We had the AC do several, Tanya Bodell and Steve Wenner. And I think there were actually really great ways, I think, to present. And the screens were such great tools. And again, people can see them at home, but clearly right there in the parking lot, people could see those videos, and it was a great way to present.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everything else is going to be less than that. But of course, we had a professional van with a full crew operating it. But in the future, when we're doing it from the gymnasium once again, we're going to have some HD switchers and some bells and whistles and graphics. So I think we can't go back and be that pleased with it. I think this has forced us to move forward, I think.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I think the crisis has shown us all over, that we have to improvise, right? and improvise, be resilient, be adaptable. And as a result, there's some things that I think we've most certainly learned that we can keep learning and trying, right? There's some things I don't think we want to go back to. I don't know that we want to continue to have parking lots if we can avoid them. I think having face-to-face meetings is obviously what people would prefer. That said, this really was a successful event. So let me just do a roundtable here quickly and ask you what your highlight was. And I'll start with Don. What was the highlight of the meeting for you?
I think it was after the meeting to hear the comments, to post on Facebook and people on Cohasset 143 saying that was the best meeting they'd ever seen. Another thing is we belong to Mass Access. It's a cable access, 300 members. People were posting, what did you do for town meeting? Well, what have you done for town meeting? What are you going to do? I was able to post some photographs, told them what we had done. And hands down, everyone thinks Cohasset's steps miles ahead of the major cities that were involved. They were like blown away. And we take a lot of pride in that.
Oh, that's great to hear. What do you think, Glenn? What was your highlight?
I think the highlight is that we were able to show off the capabilities of so many different town departments, And for the taxpayers, that's great to see. And it's good for all the department heads because we can continue to ask the taxpayers for things we need to enhance our mission. And to me, it was a great show of what we can do.
Ron.
For me, being selfish, I would say that, the ability to tackle something like this and to recognize the level of success that you have and pull it off is why I come to work every day. I like challenges like this. I like projects like this, as daunting and in depth as they are. When it's all said and done, and as Don mentioned, you hear the comments and you see the smiles and you see the success that everybody enjoyed. And that's a huge win. I mean, that every one of us should hold our heads up really high with this one and say, you know what, we pulled off something significant, never been done before. And I really think we showed what Cohasset is made of. So I think that from my perspective, that's awesome.
From the IT side, Ron, it's a long way from 4 months ago when the biggest IT challenge of the day was buying some Zoom licenses.
Yes, we've come a long way in 4 months, and it's been educational. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's been fun, but it has been educational, and it's been challenging, and we've emerged from, to some degree, the other side better than where we've been in the past. So it's good.
Well, I concur. And again, I want to once again thank everybody, all three of you, and then again, everyone else who took part. And there were dozens and dozens of folks behind the scenes and in front that made this meeting possible. And most importantly, the 213 citizens who came out and took part and actually made the meeting happen. So thank you, Cohasset. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Ron. Thank you to all the other folks, Mark and Nick in facilities, and Carolyn in the town clerk's office, Bill Quigley in the police, Bob Sylvia in the fire department, and everyone who took part. So for all of us here at the town of Cohasset, thanks for taking part in Town Meeting 2020, the 250th anniversary, something that will surely go down in history. We'll have to see how they play it up 50 years from now. So thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Chris.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Chris.
Thank you for joining us on this week's edition of Cohasset Common, and thanks to all who made this episode possible. We close today with some music from Wheelhouse Rodeo. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.
On the day my daddy died, the laws called me in. They said that I will get everything that I was stolen kin. And I only remember my pappy on the day he got that deal. On his brand new 67 Pearl White Oldsmobile. Drove up to the yard, he threw me in his lap. He said that he knew all the cops and we would catch the tap.